I'm here as a playwright and as a technology strategist. And I'm here to talk to you about how technology is transforming the arts. I believe we're actually living in a time of rather immense and painful transformation in the arts. All across the country, institutions of the arts are facing extinction. In DC, where I live, the Washington National Opera had to be subsumed into the Kennedy Center to avoid collapse. The NEA has a gun held to its head every time conservative legislators start talking about the budget. The portion of philanthropic giving that's directed to arts institutions is falling steadily. At the same time, artists like me are increasingly marginalized. The average playwright at the top of his or her profession makes $5,000 a year from royalties and commissions. $5,000. And most of us live in major urban centers where $5,000 does not go very far. It's not that we can't make a good living or that we don't have health insurance. We literally can't afford to make art. At the same time, audiences for art are diminishing, even among the most committed and faithful consumers of culture. People who visit up to 3 or more arts institutions in a given month, their numbers are falling. They have fallen by 1/3 by the last measure. Now, I believe all of these problems are related because the arts are an ecosystem. And an ecosystem is only healthy when the components that make it up are healthy, when the relationships between them are healthy, and these relationships are not doing very well right now. Look at the relationship between institutions and artists, which has become impenetrably one way. Artists have to apply for entry into the elite castle of the institution with the right pedigree, the right graduate degree from the right graduate program, the right representation, and the ones who do get admitted are woefully non-diverse. There's no people of color, there are no people from rural parts of the country, there are not enough women. At the same time, the relationship between institutions and audiences has become woefully fleeting. It's as if audience members have a series of one-night stands with different arts institutions. You see a play here, you go to an exhibition here, you listen to a concert there. Even if you do see 3 plays in a year, you see them at 3 different theaters. There's no loyalty. And then there's the relationship between artists and audiences, only there isn't one. We are estranged from one another. And as an artist, I gotta say this one's on us. Because we don't want to have a relationship with our audiences. We want to make art for ourselves. We don't want to listen. We want to talk through our art. And this is a terrible shame. Now, I believe the only thing that's going to solve this is the same thing that makes for healthy relationships everywhere in the world. Open, honest, two-way communication. Engagement between respected partners. And I also believe that technology is the thing that is getting us there faster than anything else, and the thing that is going to keep getting us there as we move forward into the future. Technology has always upended the arts throughout all of human history, from the move from clay tablets to the printing press to the Amazon Kindle. The move from storytelling around a campfire to radio broadcasts of stories to 350 channels of stories on a flat-screen HD television with a DVR. Technology has changed not only how we communicate, but how we connect with each other. Look at how technology is affecting the relationship between artists and audiences. The presumption most artists believe in is that we are the creators and audiences are the passive consumers of what we create. But this is a fiction. This is pure fiction. Audiences today have been living in the internet age for about 15 years now. There are young audiences that literally have never lived in an age in which the internet was not the predominant cultural force in our lives. And the internet is not a passive medium. You don't passively receive a website, you manipulate it. A website is art, you manipulate it. You create a narrative by the click choices you make as you move through a website and from website to website. The fundamental premise of the internet is choice. And so audience members like this, they walk into a museum and they literally don't understand at some level why you can't click the little placard next to the Mona Lisa. Why you have to passively walk from one gallery to the next and just see the next era in art history, why you can't go deeper and explore the Mona Lisa in great depth. This is why museum after museum, from the Smithsonian to the American Museum of Natural History, are gamifying their entire art experience with iPad applications and iPhone applications and Foursquare, creating a layer of social interaction, a layer of choice on top of and in between and through the art. But the promise of the internet isn't just choice, it's also personalization. On the internet, your data follows you where you go, your preferences follow you where you go. So again, what this means is that people want to draw a mustache on the Mona Lisa. Not just to deface it, but to make it look like their Uncle Tony. You want to see yourself in the art you create. About 6 or 8 months ago, the band Arcade Fire released an interactive music video online, and you could enter the street address of your childhood home, and their music would be set to images of the neighborhood you grew up in. This was immensely powerful and transformative for the people who experienced it, because it was a shared experience of music with a personal experience of imagery. It was personalized art. How about the relationship between institutions and audiences? I like to compare this to the relationship between churchgoers and churches. Churchgoers have commitment to their churches. They tithe. And what do we do when we go to an arts institution? We buy a ticket. That's the level of investment we have. But the level of investment is going up now thanks to services like Kickstarter and Indiegogo. You can actually make a donation to an arts institution before the art you're going to see even exists, before you can buy a ticket. You have a deeper level of engagement and investment in the institution itself. The same thing is happening with community-supported theaters, where community bands together to contribute to the ongoing existence of an arts institution. That is loyalty. Instead of buying a ticket, you're planting seeds and reaping a harvest. The other big development is voice. For the first time, audiences have a clearer voice with institutions than they ever have had before. So in the past, when an institution wanted to know how it was doing, what's the one measure it had? It could count the box office receipts. If the box office is big, then the audience clearly likes what I was doing. But box office receipts only measure the volume of an audience's interest, not the content. You know that they liked something, not what they liked about it or why it moved them. But now we've got WordPress blogs about the theater. We have Yelp reviews of a symphony. We have Facebook wall posts for what a publisher is doing. There's lots of information out there. So an institution that's smart and willing to listen and learn can actually tune their future endeavors to their audience's interests. They understand what the audience really wants and can deliver it. So then there's the relationship between institutions and artists. Again, this one-way relationship. Artists have to have the right introduction from the right person and the right representation to get admitted. And most often they aren't. There's a lot of noise. What's wanted here is access. Artists want to be able to find a way in, and no technology is giving them greater access than Twitter. I am only here today because of Twitter. I only know about 7 or 8 of you because of Twitter. Twitter has helped introduce me to the leaders of many arts institutions around the country. Because instead of the formal communications we have between artists and institutions, audition packet submissions, query letters, portfolio reviews, we now have this great egalitarian democratic melange of tweets. We have ideas and personalities. And the ones that are most impressive earn the highest clout scores. It is a meritocracy instead of an oligarchy. If you're interested in a museum, you can tweet something to the curator about your the latest exhibition you saw, and the conversation is off and running. It moves too quickly for there to be any gatekeepers. On the other hand, the leaders of institutions, well, to them it's a lot of noise. And what they need is to find signal in that noise so that they can maintain real connections with artists. And there are new technologies that are doing that too. There's one in particular I like to talk about called submishmash. You got to say that 6 times fast. What this does is it helps publishers manage the flow of submissions of poetry, short stories, essays, in an extremely efficient online digital manner, so that they're free to focus instead of on licking stamps and plugging envelopes and filling out spreadsheets to maintain records of the poets whose work they've reviewed. They can actually work with poets. They can actually build relationships, ongoing artistic, important relationships. They can work with a short story writer to edit a short story. There's a service called Pitch Central that helps playwrights talk about their work in such a way that artistic directors are able to find what they're looking for. So there are matchmaking services of all kinds, and I've only mentioned 2 of what I know to be dozens that are helping institutions and audiences make dates. Now, technology's done a lot, right? It's given us access, connections, investment, voice, personalization, and choice. But there's an even bigger evolution that needs to happen. See, right now, institutions are sitting on top of a mountain. And they reach down one side and they pluck a few artists and bring them up into the castle on the top of that mountain. And then they shout down to the other side and say, hey, audiences, look at who we plucked. For $37.50, you can climb up and you can come see them. And the only exchange that happens between artists and audiences happens in this rarefied, mediated, institutional space. Now, there's a lot to be discovered there, and there's a lot of delight, and that's great. But if we're going to survive into the new century, institutions are going to need to complement their role as a cultural curator with a role as a platform focused on engagement between artists and audiences and facilitating those engagements on the terms set by artists and audiences. We need to fulfill both roles. This is the same thing that's happening in the United States government. It is beginning to supplement its role as a centralized controlling authority, making and setting laws, with a role as a platform connecting citizens to businesses and citizens to other citizens. This is Government 2.0 as discussed by Tim O'Reilly ad nauseum. The same thing is happening in businesses, which are focusing less on basically manipulating us into buying things, into a role as a platform connecting consumers with products and services. It's the difference between the New York Times classified ads and Craigslist. It's a big shift that's happening. This is really part, actually, of a larger generational shift. So it began with the greatest generation. These folks had enough faith in centralized institutional authority to build the very institutions I'm talking about. They gave us a great gift. And then they had kids. And the baby boomers started to question authority and say, hey, you know what? I see some frays around the edges here and things we need to ask about, down to my generation, Generation X. And by that time, we kind of lost faith in institutions entirely. We don't really believe very much that they can give us anything of value. But now we're living in the millennial age. And millennials are ready to believe in institutions again, but the ones that they want to believe in are the ones that help them express themselves. They will affiliate with a brand that makes them more like themselves. That's what they care about. And institutions that aren't going to adapt to the millennial age are going to be vulnerable. Because making art and interacting with art is part of being human. Those things are always going to survive. But institutions come and go. We don't watch plays in the same places we watched them 50 years ago. We might watch plays in different places 50 years from now. And that would actually be a loss, because institutions do serve a role in stewarding our culture and in maintaining common knowledge about where we've been. And we would lose that if we lost institutions. So the more they start orienting themselves to the present reality sooner, the better. Thank you.